Boom! We've got another anime to talk about. So over the past couple of days, I spent my time watching a show that I thought had some potential. It had a pretty interesting plot, a little bit of a spin on something that I haven't really seen too often, and the art looked decent in my opinion. But I was fooled, absolutely fooled. And I recommend you guys don't fall for the same thing I did. Don't watch it. I'm getting ahead of myself. So the show I'm talking about right now is called Re-Monster, and this show was a mess. I watched it over the past couple of days, and when I say watched, I mean like trudged through it with a lot of difficulty. Basically, the premise of Re-Monster is the main character gets reincarnated into another world as a monster, a goblin to be exact. And now that's not really new, but in this world, goblins are able to like evolve into like a bunch of different stuff and get a lot stronger and get a bunch of abilities. So it's a little bit more unique. It sounded pretty cool. It looked pretty cool. And honestly, it should have been pretty good, but it wasn't. And I'll be honest, the first episode had me completely fooled. The first episode made it seem like a great show, to be honest. Now, I'm not a fan of like gore and blood, and the first episode had a lot of that, like a lot of blood, a lot of very visual stuff. And I was like, maybe that's a bit too much, but it honestly hyped me up for the rest of it, because I was like, wow, if the first episode is like this, I think the rest is going to be great. And then the second episode happened, and the third episode, and the fourth episode. And by that point, my only thought in my mind was like, wow, it's a Gooner show. It has the most cursed scenes since like Goblin Slayer, maybe. And not really scenes, because they don't really show too much, but like the most cursed premise and ideas that happen throughout this. Almost every episode has something that's morally questionable at best. So at that point, I was already pretty much mentally checked out of this show. I thought it was just going to be a random Gooner show. But after episode 4, the next 8 episodes weren't super Gooner-like, but there was still a lot of weird, very weird scenes. They did try to be like an actual show, like with action and like villains and like cool looking characters and stuff like that, but they pretty much failed on all fronts. Like when I watched this, I couldn't care about a single character. I couldn't get emotionally invested in any character because they were all just had no personality, no depth at all. Every character was just a very, very shallow, hollow, like nothing burger, to be honest. And when it's really hard to like any of the characters, and the characters don't really like do anything of meaning, it's really hard to get invested and enjoy the show. And it seems like a lot of people felt the same way, because on Mal the show is rated a 6.55, and as you continue to watch the show, you realize that multiple other shows have done similar things, and this show just does it the worst out of all of them. It is a massive disappointment, and it is unfortunate because I think the animation wasn't too bad and the art was fine as well. Like I liked the way some of the characters looked, like the main character, but it just wasn't backed up by any sustenance at all, by the story, the voice acting, the characters' personality. Like everything else fell flat, because there was some fight scenes that didn't look terrible. Like I could tell like the animation crew wasn't terrible, but that also only happened when they were animating, because there was also a lot of scenes where it was just like a picture and then just like 3 lines of text would just go by on this one picture, so you'll be on the same picture for like 10-15 seconds. And it is a low budget show, so it doesn't matter too much. The genres of this show were action, adventure, and fantasy, and a lot of people were saying that it should have had harem as well, and I absolutely agree. It was basically just your average isekai slop, except it was also a harem without actually telling you it was a harem beforehand, so they give you an absolutely terrible surprise. Like this show was a disaster, to be honest. Probably by episode 10 the show has you rethinking why you even started it, if you even make it that far. This show is, I get the feeling that a lot of people would probably drop this show if they started it and found out what it actually is about, because it is diabolical, very morally interesting. A lot of these scenes are. And if you go through the reviews on my anime list, a lot of people share my same sentiment. So even though some of the characters looked fine and some of the fights and animation was fine, everything else was terrible. So I can only rate this probably a 6.5. And this is actually one of the very few times that I agree spot on with everyone else, like the rating of the show being an average of 6.5. But I can honestly see it being rated lower as well, because this show was an absolute bore. There was no life, there was no personality. It was literally nothing. It was a waste of probably 4 or 5 hours. I can't recommend watching it. If you're interested, probably just maybe read the manga, because I think that might be a better experience. Some people are saying they cut out a lot of scenes, which usually does happen, but I think maybe the manga might be a better experience, because the show was not very good. But yeah, that's going to be about everything for me. It's a very, very mid show, and I can't really recommend it. A 6.5, and yeah, that's about it. See ya.